Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us at Redesigning Normal podcast. Today, my guest is Alex Holliday from Glasshouses, which is an event space company in New York City. Hi, Alex.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me on this podcast. I just want to jump right into it. Alex, can you explain your role at Glasshouses and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening today. Like Andrew said, my name is Alex. I'm with Glasshouses. We are an event space company in New York. And in case you don't know what an event space is, I'm sure you've been to one. Event spaces are where you might have a wedding or a bar mitzvah or a milestone birthday celebration. Or if you're on the corporate side, you might be having a conference or an investor meeting, a nonprofit gala. So that's what an event space is. In New York, they happen to be very special because we have very little space. And so, there are tons of event spaces in and around New York City that cater to the needs of different social, corporate, and nonprofit clients. And we happen to be one of them. Our brand is a little bit more focused on providing a modern space with views of the city and floor to ceiling windows, and that's sort of our brand. But you can find a wide variety of different types of event spaces for different types of people all around. And just so happens that we're building one of the largest event spaces in New York City right now, which is, I think, going to be the topic of our conversation today. It's a 75,000 square foot space located in Midtown Manhattan. It's in a high rise building with views of the city and the water. And we did some really truly special stuff because it is a purpose built space as opposed to being a repurposed space such as like an old industrial building or an old bank or something like that, which is for the past, I'd say, 20 years been the trend for owners and operators of event spaces. So that's a little bit of our company. We have a growing team, and we're mostly focused on the exciting opening of our new event space called the Glasshouse. It's going to be our flagship space. It's what I just described, and yeah, that's basically it, Andrew.
Alex, thanks so much. And I'm going to encourage everybody that's listening to check out your website, which I think is theglasshouses.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome. So, part of this podcast, the reason that I wanted to do this was because I wanted to speak to people that are operating facilities and event spaces and buildings and aquariums and whatever to talk about a little bit about the pandemic, what we've learned so far, and maybe where we're heading. And I thought talking to you would be really interesting to get your thoughts on, you know, what you think the sort of future of gathering together to celebrate, is going to look like.
Right. Right.
What are your thoughts on what do you think people want to do now versus maybe what they
Oh.
wanted to do before?
Well, okay. So if we're just talking, if we're comparing like 2019 to, you know, say 2022, when this
Yep.
is hopefully completely done, that's one thing. I think the first thing that I would say is that people are craving gathering more than ever right now, right? Like, I've been in the house every day for like the past week, and like I've barely left to go get a deli sandwich.
Right.
So people are craving really basic human, needs, like just gathering with people. We're tribal beings by nature. We like to be around others and socialize and gossip and see pretty things and experience something with great music. Like people are craving all of those, stimuli in their life. And so I think that number one, people are just going to want to gather. Like they're going to want to go to concerts, they're going to want to go to movies, they're going to want to see their friends, they're going to want to travel, and hopefully they're going to want to have a ton of great events. And then, going more specifically into your question, as it relates to those events, I think that they're going to be more fabulous than ever. A lot of our clients had to unfortunately deal with the heartbreak of having to either cancel or postpone the event that they had planned for 2020, for example. Like wedding clients. They had this dream in their head of that they've been thinking about their entire life of a day that's really special um, to them, the couple, the partners and their families and their friends. And they unfortunately had to cancel that. But, we've been talking to quite a few that, they may have gotten married in a small private gathering, but they still want to have that celebration. And so, what I've been noticing, interestingly, is they're going over the top and bigger than ever, and they want to do something really unique and special and experiential and have something that will be memorable, because not only do they want to celebrate that occasion or that milestone or that special event, but they also want to just be around people, and they want it to be really memorable, and people are craving that. So I think that the most the most interesting thing that I've seen in the last few months, when we're talking to clients and whatnot that are rebooking or booking new events, is they really want things to be memorable, magical, and epic. They want this epic moment that they can remember for the rest of their lives, or they can really make an imprint on somebody or whatnot. So I think I think it's going to be better than ever, to answer your
Yeah,
question in a short way.
you know what? I agree. Like I've spoken to a lot of people about sort of like the reopening, and a lot of people keep saying this like this roaring 20s thing, where it's
Yeah.
like if you're going to put people
Yes.
inside, for a year or more, expect that they're going to explode out into the public scene when they can,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And
In
so
all forms and fashions, like there's gonna, I hope that there's
right.
just gonna be this flood of like energy that's gonna be in the streets, and people are gonna be motivated and excited to do lots of different things.
Wow. So, just out of curiosity, people are obviously, you said they're booking with you or rebooking with you. Do you have like a like a sense of kind of when it's safe to do that? Like when when are you taking
I,
bookings for?
if I told you, I would be lying if I knew exactly when the date is.
Right,
What
right.
we do with our clients typically is there, we add protective language that allows for them to terminate a contract, and get their money back, etc. If, for knock on wood, this does not happen, um, you know, restrictive measures are still in place, and there are limits to gathering for a certain number of people, etc. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable going into booking an event, and like they're not gonna get screwed over and like have to still pay for something that they can't have. So
Sure.
um, people are still trying to get dates, and I think I would say if I were to put a date or a date range on a consensus within the market, I would say that that date feels like fall. So September or
Yep.
October, call it.
Got
But
it.
of course, that varies, and nobody knows. And whoever tells
Sure.
you that they know is lying. And so I'm not going to tell you a date that I think. I'm just going to tell you what kind of the average of what some people are feeling comfortable with as it relates to booking. So
Got it.
fall is looking really good, and hopefully that's it. And if not, then and I think Biden said the other day, like back to normal, normal, glimpse of normals, like Christmas. But who knows, really? I mean, it really depends on so many different variables, like the vaccine and um, really like local governments and how herd immunity is going and the curve. Like, there's just so many things that you have to consider that I'm no expert in. That we'll see what happens.
Okay. Got it. That's good insight. I want to go back for a minute because I don't think we didn't really cover it. You guys, besides building a really incredibly huge and amazing event space at the moment, you have another space that you've been using, which is also incredible in Chelsea. I'm interested,
Yep.
before the pandemic, did health and safety ever come up for like groups gathering? Was that a thing that people would ask about?
No, no, not really. I mean, of course, people want a clean and inviting space. That's always just like, number one, people want to be at a clean place a lot of times, right? So
Yeah.
it's just the basics of like being like a clean person. Like, yes, they care about those things, but did they think about them, and did they think about them very specifically, and did they have boxes to check? Like, for example, as a corporate user, did X bank have a list of of boxes that they needed to check from corporate measures that needed to be in place at whatever they go to. No, that wasn't the case,
Okay.
right? But now people are thinking about that. It's top of mind, and a lot of times companies will have guidelines that have been given to them from headquarters that say, if you are going to have a gathering, then you have to have this standard of social distancing, and there have to be temperature checks, and there has to be sanitization of the space, or they have to have the certification, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It depends on the client.
Okay.
Um, but no, that none of these things ever came up before.
And
Do I
and
expect
and
them to come up in the future? I don't know. I don't know if a lot of these protective measures are here for now and gone later, or if they are here to stay. I mean, I think that there will be some things that we might keep, but I also think that, kind of going back to my other point, once there is herd immunity, a lot of these things might be forgotten.
right, so there's sort of two ways of thinking, right? Some people are like, as soon as there's a vaccine, herd immunity, people want to go right back to the way things were. Maybe they're going to do more like remote working, right? But like
Right,
fundamentally, we
right,
want to
yeah,
do these
exactly.
things. The
Keep the good
but
stuff.
exactly right. The good stuff was remote working. Um,
Yeah,
but actually, it's interesting. I didn't think about this before, that like a corporate client might have, when they come to you now, they might have
right,
like certain criteria, at least for now. We're going to do an event,
right.
but we need X, Y, and Z done. Can you work the event, and help us do temperature checks for 200 people or whatever?
Right. I mean, if you think about it, like every single company in America and world had to all of a sudden become an expert at remote working and at health measures, and how to gather people and how not to gather people for their own business. And so
Right.
that becomes a directive, and that becomes a policy, and those policies end up working their way into how people plan events. So totally.
Do you have, again, I know this is pretty early on this, like, do you have private people who are doing a bat mitzvah or a wedding who are also asking this stuff? Or are they kind of being like, I need the space, this is how many people I'm bringing? Like, are they thinking that way now?
It depends on the client. Some
Okay.
clients are more sensitive than others. One great thing about our space, especially our new space on 12th Avenue, the Glasshouse, is that it's really large. Like, it's the largest event space in the city. So that might have been a little intimidating for somebody in the past, but now, like, that in and of itself, I think space is what is the most top of mind when it comes to like the global list of measures that might be incorporated for an event. And so that's a great thing for our space. But there are some clients on the social side that are thinking about things like temperature checks, et cetera. But it really varies from client to client, and the extent to which they care or they want to implement, also is very, I would say, volatile if you look at like the mix of people that we have. So it just really depends.
Got it. So is
It
there,
depends. It depends on like the age of the people that are coming to
mhm.
the event, and it depends on when it is, and all that kind of stuff. So
And I guess like what I know of your business is like you guys have this fantastic vessel for rent and all these services on top that you can add. So depending on what the person's needs are, whether it's catering or whether it's like health technologies or whatever, you can do it and work with them to sort of put together a program that works for their event on Saturday, which might be different than someone's event on Thursday.
correct. So with us, our business model is a little bit different than a typical event space. Like, if you're used to, I would say, more the standard event space model that you might see throughout the country, it might be something that a lot of people are familiar with, which is like a banquet hall where they do everything, and all those services that you mentioned might be included. For us, we're renting the space,
Mhm.
and we have designed a space that is very flexible for the needs of lots of different types of clients, and looks beautiful as is, but it can also be dressed up in lots of different styles. Um, and we do the lighting and the audio and the video and the rigging, etc. And we do the beverage. Outside of that, everything else is done with third-party partners. And what we like is that allows for our clients to have choice. And so if on Saturday, um, Jane is getting married at the Glasshouse, she can bring in her favorite caterer that did her bat mitzvah when she turned 13 on Long Island or something like that, right? And
Right.
then on Monday, um, you know, one of the largest banks from Japan is coming in for an annual shareholder meeting for their shareholders in New York, and they want to have a corporate catering company come in that is very, very, very focused on COVID-19 measures and has like the best rating. They can bring them in, and then the next day could be a different caterer. So yeah, it's
Got it.
very customizable. So we don't do all of the services ourselves, but we partner with what we call our preferred vendors
Hmm.
to execute within the space, and they're all very reputable, and not only in New York but also our event spaces very well to help all of our different clients with all their different needs.
That's great. Is there anything that you've done for your people that you've changed from before that you're now doing for, like, let's say the sort of back office
Oh,
folks in terms of this?
well, we all are working remotely, and giving the option to come into the office if they want to and if they feel safe doing so. I think that we being that we have a construction site, so there are obviously measures at the construction site that are specific to not only the local regulations but also what we want to do as owners and the building wants to do as building owners. And so as it relates to like hand cleaning stations and things like that, we've put in a lot of different stuff on site for people to utilize.
But it's sort of unclear whether that's like a forever thing or whether it's a like until maybe the fall and then you can go back to, you
Yeah,
know,
it's unclear, and I'm willing to wait until we have more guidance to actually determine as to what we want to keep and not keep, and what people, if there's a demand and a need for certain things, then that's one thing, and we can always cross that bridge when we get there and figure out how to incorporate it into our daily lives.
mhm, got it.
And then if there's regulation, we'll see what that regulation is, and we would incorporate it. But for now, we're just kind of waiting and seeing, because speculation has not been the best thing for a lot of people. I would say the last year, and Easter
Right.
2020 has come and gone, and we're still here. So
Got it. So if you have, I'll just ask this a slightly different way. If you have a nervous groom who came to you and was like, I don't want to get COVID, like, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm going to bring my own caterer and the caterer is going to have their own criteria, but like, what do you guys do? Do you have some sort of thing to show them, like a cut sheet or something to say like, this is what we implement
oh yeah,
for our
so
events?
we 100%, we have guidelines and measures that we've incorporated or have been trying to incorporate,
Right.
but can't yet because of like gathering measures and whatnot. But we do have a set of guidelines and things that um, we do as a venue to ensure that we're doing the most that we can on our side, to help prevent the spread of any COVID or things like that. So
Awesome. That makes people
test
feel, I'm
regular
sure that makes,
testing if the regular
right.
testing, and like there's different things that we've done to the coat check, and there's stuff, making things less touchy, and keeping people far apart from each other as possible are
Can you
some things
describe
that we've
can you
done.
describe some of those things? Yeah, like what did you do in the code check?
So in the coat check, rather than doing tickets, we've been looking at an online system, for example, so that
Got
it,
it.
it stays electronic.
Hmm.
um, and there, some people like this, some people don't. It really depends on the event. But we have a bagging program where people can bag their own things at a coat check, and it becomes more of like a check in, check out without actually touching hands. When you're at a coat check, typically you're like touching the hanger, and then the hanger goes to the other person, and then back and forth. So
Right.
we've eliminated that for people that want to use that. And then some of the other things are we regularly sanitize the space after every single event. Um, and those are like, it's like head to toe, like the whole space we've
Are you using a
sanitized.
spray or are you using like a wipe down? How do you do it? Because it's a big space.
Well, not the big space because we don't have any events yet because we're not open yet. But at Chelsea, for example, when
Mhm.
we were able to have a few events when the curve was low, we would spray and wipe down everything.
Wow. Got it.
And then, we've talked to a lot of different consultants, and there are a lot of different consultants in the sanitary world that focus on this specifically that might be able to help. For example, for us, if the need is still there when we actually do, open at the new space, which is very large, like you said, to come in and help with sanitization on a regular basis if needed.
Got it. Like pre-event, post-event, like outsourced team that comes and cleans
Exactly.
like everything top to bottom. Cool.
Yep.
I want to go
Yep.
back to something you
Exactly.
said. If you still have a minute or two to talk,
Sure.
space
Yeah.
came
Of
up,
course. For you,
right?
of course.
So what were you going
I said, for you, of course. You've been like so
to say?
instrumental in helping us design a fabulous space. So, of course, for you, I have time.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you. And I'll say full disclosure to people who are listening. Alex and I've worked as a technology consultant for Alex on this space, which is why I wanted to speak to him
The best
about this.
technology consultant.
The best one on the project. Thanks. um,
Oh,
I
don't send this to the other team members.
don't worry about it. We'll edit it all out. So this topic of space has come up in some other interviews that I've done as well, and I'll give you a little bit of context. Speaking to a guy from a big property management company, and I was kind of like edging around this idea that like people are remotely working, and like how is that going to change commercial space, right? That they happen to hold a lot of. And he said to me,
Hmm.
"You know what? We think it's going to be a boom. We think that space." You kind of said the similar thing for events, right? He was basically saying like if the normal calculation is that each worker needs 150 square feet, let's say, on your floor plate,
Right.
regulations and or other factors will come into play that now it might be 200 square feet is needed for each worker. So even though people might be coming into the office 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week, the actual like need for space increases by a quarter or something per person. I don't
Right.
know if I don't know because I'm not in that business. It's the first time I've heard anything other than doom and gloom for commercial real estate, in the past 10
Right.
months. Because most people would say, oh my God,
Right.
there's skyscrapers that are empty in Midtown. But to
Yep.
your point, you've got a huge open space, which should make people feel really good when they're doing a couple hundred people, let's say. I'm sure you can do 1,000 people.
Yep. Yeah. Totally.
That is
Easily.
a
Yeah.
huge amenity. What is your capacity, by the way, for the big space?
So our official public assembly permit, which is what the city sort of tells any space, whether it be commercial, retail, whatever kind of space, basically um, is 1860, and so that's what we're approved for right now for 1860
Wow.
people in a
Yeah.
seated capacity. So at rounds, like a round table of 10, you would
Hmm.
have 1860. Um, Seated in the entire event space. But what you can do typically at spaces when you want to have more than that is you apply for what's called a TPA with the city. It's a temporary
Yep.
place of assembly permit, and you just essentially augment your infrastructure by having fire guards, and then if we were to have like standing room only or cocktail type reception, we could easily fit 3,000 people within the space
Wow. And of course the space has been
indoors, and then we
already
have outdoor space
indoors,
too. So
right?
yeah.
The space has already been designed to allow for that many people to like get up to it on the elevators or stairs to get out of it
It,
in case there's an emergency, right?
exactly. So,
Um,
and that's what the place of assembly is, a calculation for the width of your stairs, and how the corridors are designed, et cetera. So the city uses all of those different metrics to come up with
sure.
that number, and that number is 1860 for us.
That's a lot of people. That
It
really is like
is.
that's a lot of
It
people.
is. Can you imagine 1,860 people together right now?
That's the thing. It's like it's almost like I know we'll get there, Alex, but it's like how are we going to
Oh
get
yeah.
there and how are people going to are people going to forget about this completely? And
I
like
think
like in
my hunches, and this is off the record, even though I'm being recorded. I think people are going to forget about it. I think people are going to want to forget about it. I think people are going to want to be in a new era of their lives. It's been hard for a lot of people, and um, I think that yes, there are a lot of lessons that have been learned as it relates to like personal hygiene, sanitation, how close you get to people, etc. But you know, do I see that like our way of being changes drastically? Maybe for a little bit of time, but once
okay,
people ease into being comfortable and this is no longer a threat to people's safety, I think it goes back to normal, Andrew. Honestly, I really do, because that's kind of what's happened through history, right? Like things like this have happened through history. It's not like society has drastically changed for the long run afterwards. Maybe there have been new things that have been incorporated into general society, like wearing masks in certain parts of the world. Maybe that's a thing that we might keep. But I think that for the most part, life goes back to normal and it resumes as it kind of was. There might be a
right.
few things here and there that we do differently. Maybe the way that we ride planes is a little bit different. I mean, maybe they keep masks on the planes. Who knows? But I don't think that this is going to be a drastic change of what our normal lives look like if you look at 2019 versus whenever we're through this thing.
Right, like 2022, 2023, right? There is going to be a moment where you go to a grocery store and don't wear a mask. Like it'll be the
Correct.
first
A
time, and it'll
hundred
be like,
percent.
and a
Yes.
couple people will still be wearing them, and they
Yeah.
might
It's gonna.
be
Yeah.
looking
It's gonna be weird.
that,
It's gonna be awkward. It's gonna be very awkward. You're
yeah,
gonna be the one person like, yeah, and you'll go to a different city or something, and like the mask wearing is it's different. Like you'll feel weird and awkward, and there's gonna be all that stuff, and that'll be sort of the awkward phase. But I think ultimately the masks are coming off, unless
right,
you're like it. And it's funny because I remember going to Japan a few years ago, and there would be people would be wearing masks on the subway, and we would be, not making fun of it, but sort of like having a chuckle, like, "Oh my gosh, everyone's wearing masks, how funny!" Da, da, da. But now I get it. Now, like Asia's gone through SARS several times. Like,
right. They were like
SARS has
shocked,
SARS
right?
has been part of the fabric of like their like just being prepared and ready, etc. And that has been incorporated into things like riding in public transportation or being on a plane. And it's not like a regulated mandate or anything like that. But people, if maybe they had an experience with it, or they have a weak immune system, or they're predisposed in some way, and they wear a mask, and that's not weird at all, and it shouldn't be weird. And maybe that's something that we might take with us after this. So we'll see what happens.
Right, exactly. Like you could have some mask wearing, you could have people who prefer to work remotely. I don't know that like the remote working, I've certainly done it for a long time and I think it's really powerful. But I miss people.
Yeah,
I know I
it's not
always
it's
have.
it's not it's not Zoom will never take the place of a meeting, and it'll never take the place of seeing people and having a vibe at the office and like a culture,
Yeah.
and seeing your coworkers smiling and like having a joke and having that camaraderie. You can't really replicate that over the internet, and I don't think you ever will be able to. So there will always be a place for an office,
Right.
um,
And an
and
event space. you
a
know,
100% in event space. I'm being very optimistic about like event spaces, and even like going back to the office, and because I talk to all my friends all the time. Everyone is just so over it,
mhm.
like
Yeah, I do.
how
I do.
there's nothing to watch on TV. I'm so tired of my apartment, and I haven't been anywhere in a long time, and I'm dying to go to a restaurant, and I'm dying to like be at a hotel bar, and like all
Yep.
these things. Like there's a desire and a need to do all that stuff. So
I think the other part of this is like there's a social demand to get out and go to the hotel bar and stuff and to have the wedding that you postponed or something, right? There's also like,
right.
you know, we hear a lot about sort of economic fallout of all of this, which is awful. There's still people that have good paying jobs. They just haven't spent any of the money. They haven't gone anywhere and they haven't done anything. So
Right.
there's actually a rush of, I think, that kind of thing where people start, as soon as they can safely do so, going on vacations
I
and
don't
planning
know.
the
I
events.
think I think that they spent a lot of that money on Amazon.
I know I did. The
Amazon.
last thing I had been thinking about this too. Like, I didn't know anything about the 1918 pandemic before COVID, right? I like looked into it, and there
Oh
might be like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Did you
There was
know
like
about it?
there's like yeah, yeah. I did because I'm a nerd and I love like there's a PBS show called American Experience and it's like a documentary series.
Sure,
But
I
yeah,
know that. Yeah.
yeah. So there is like a Spanish flu show that was on I don't know years ago, and for some reason I watched it and then so yeah, I did know about it, and people always try to bring parallels, but as similar as it was, it's also very different in a lot of ways.
Well,
With
did you know what was going to come because you watched that like documentary? Like, was there like
oh, I
enough
didn't,
in
I
there?
did not know it was going to come. I just like when they were talking about it, I kind of knew what they were talking about at the very least. But
Okay,
no, the other thing that I watched was Contagion. Did you ever watch that
I
at the
definitely
very
would not have
beginning of
watched
this?
that. No, that would
So
scare the
I
crap
watched
out
it
of
at the
me.
very beginning because it was so March of 2020 was so
Yeah.
bizarre and
Yes.
it came all of a sudden for us because everyone was joking about it and you had the president not taking it seriously and you saw it like in China but like we didn't really see what was going on and like it wasn't really a thing until like the end of February like everyone was traveling. I was in Madrid and then in Cuba and then in LA and then all of a sudden in March it starts to become kind of serious and like all this like discrepant information coming, everyone's confused, but we're all kind of still like, oh, this isn't going to be a big deal. And then like I remember the day that the NBA like just was like no more games, everyone freaked
Uh,
out, and that was the end, and that was like world shut down. And the funny thing is, we thought it was like 2 weeks. We didn't think it was
right.
like
Be a
a
couple
year
weeks,
and a
maybe a
half.
month. Right. A
It's
couple of
almost been a
months.
year. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost been a year. Literally, I remember sending a note out to the team we think this will be like 2 weeks, so just have your laptop with you at home, and we'll just be safe, etc. It's so bizarre to go back to that moment and think that this was just going to be 2 weeks, and it's been just such a huge world event. And like you said, it's been devastating for so many people, just in terms of their lives and their families and their livelihoods. That it's definitely for those who didn't kill it, definitely made us stronger, right? So
Look, it's been rough, right? And I think people will have a much different sense of what happened and what's happening, today than they did in April of 2020, right? Just like you said, like we thought it
yeah,
was going to be like 2 weeks or a month or something like that, and now it's like,
yeah,
all right, like I understand a little bit more when somebody official says we're going to be living with this for a long time. I understand what that means now more than I used to. I figured it was like, you get the vaccine to everybody and it goes away and then it's over, like measles or something. But I
yeah.
get
It's
like,
not that easy.
I think everybody's sort of become like a little bit of a virologist or whatever, whatever the right term is, you know,
Yeah, except
unfortunately.
for
And
me. Except for me, I'm like, no, I'll sit here and let you guys tell me what's going on because I definitely didn't do that well in like in high school chemistry. So
well, just wear your mask, you'll be fine. That's what they say.
yeah,
Well, thank you so
exactly.
much for talking to me about all this stuff. Is there? I'm trying to think of what else I could ask you because I've got you on the phone. You know, the idea behind the podcast, redesigning normal, is to just get people's perspective on like what's happening and like where we think we're going. And I think I've got some really great stuff from you.
Yeah,
It's
I think it's been a crazy thing, but I think that we uh, collectively feel or see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope that remains the situation. We all know things can change really quickly,
yeah.
but I think that all the momentum with the vaccines and just kind of seeing people's spirits kind of come back, and I think we're kind of getting over this last big surge, which was terrible. um, Optimism shall prevail, I hope.
It'll coincide. This recovery will coincide with like warmer weather where you are. and like say as the snow melts and everybody sort of comes
Yeah.
out. I
Yeah,
think
exactly.
hopefully it'll be, April, May, and it's like things are getting warmer. Oh, and like now this is open, 50% capacity, and this place is open. And I see it the same way you do, I think, which is that like optimism sort of wins the day in this kind of situation. Because
Yeah,
the other way to look at it is like we're stuck inside, it's been a year, like things are getting worse. And
right.
that's like no way to be, particularly when you look back on what's occurred in the past 10 or 11 months. They developed a vaccine, made millions of them, and then sent them all over the world. Like that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. If we could just get him into arms.
That's the next problem. But it
I
sounds
mean,
like
don't forget about those of us that like actually really ended up liking being at home all the time. Like there's a lot of people that are like, I can do this at home thing. I'm pretty much a homebody. This is kind of great. Like
did this
becoming recluses with cats everywhere. And
did this change your thoughts on living it? You live in New York City,
I
right?
do, I do. Yeah.
Did this change your thoughts on where you live at all? Because I know a lot of people said, screw this. I'm going to where I can have grass, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did not like relocate. I mean, I moved apart. I did get a new apartment, but
Huh.
that was because we needed more space, and the more space I think was even before the pandemic. But like, having an office and all that kind of stuff was even more important when there's work from home and two people and
Yeah.
Zoom calls, and no, so we needed a new apartment before and especially after COVID hit. But I did take some time to go somewhere that was a lot warmer, Miami, and did my quarantining, so to speak. I really don't like when people misuse the word quarantine because it's not quarantine, but I hung out and was in the sun and the pool in Miami for a bit of the pandemic, like at the beginning, like in April,
Mhm.
May, June, July, and that was very nice because New York's not was not it was not very fun. It was a little drab, um, depressing, some might say,
Right.
especially in March, April, when we are just getting used to this. I think this time around, there is some sign of life outside when you walk around, and it doesn't feel so depressing. There are restaurants open and whatnot, and you see people out. And people are very resilient, and they're very quick to get accustomed to whatever their circumstances are. And so I think at this
Sure.
point in time, we're more accustomed to whatever it is that we had to change in our daily lives. And so this time around, it feels okay. But
Okay.
I'm good with New York, and I love New York, and New York is always going to be New York. And all the haters that want to say that New York's going to be never the same. Okay, let's talk in 2 years. We'll see when you're
Wow.
in town.
Wow. I want you to be my real estate agent too. That's a great outlook. Look, New York City restaurants open 25% capacity. Will you go and have food at a restaurant right now?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Awesome. That is
yep,
so
yeah.
awesome.
Of course, I think the restaurants have done I feel terrible about what they've gone through because it just freaking sucks. Everyone in my industry, generally hospitality, it just really sucks. But I was so impressed by the resilience by different establishments, and
Hmm.
namely restaurants, and how quickly they responded with whatever it was that like the city was saying at the time, because you get different stories and different guidelines, and it's not always so clear. But they did in New York, they did a great job, and I think in other places too, of creating these new outdoor dining experiences. And they went a step further, and a lot of restaurants actually they designed them, and they made them kind of cool and beautiful, and they took over parts of the street. And especially in the summertime, it was great to see all that happening, and be able to enjoy it. And I hope that everyone in the world has a newfound appreciation for just how important all of those types of establishments are, and go out and utilize them to the max when it's safe to do so, because
Yeah.
we need all that. It's part of the fabric of our cities, and it's part of the fabric of our daily lives, and they're not to be taken for granted. And hopefully, hopefully a lot of people feel the same.
Wow. I'm going to leave the podcast on that incredible notion. Alex Holiday, thank you so much for joining
Thank,
me on this podcast. I really appreciate it.
thank you. It was great. It's good. It's good to catch up, and
You too.
hopefully we see you soon, man.
You will. You'll see me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk to you offline.
All right. Well, everyone be safe, and it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, Alex. Bye.
Take care.